Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the most awaited session on robotics process automation. Our speaker, Mr. Vikas DG, is a senior practice leader, Wipro Limited. He comes with 20 plus years rich experience and deep technology know-how. On the business front of technology partnership, he has proven his expertise in building relationships through positive and clear measurement and articulation in various fields and chosen technology for clients, partners, and service aggregators. It is going to be a great opportunity to learn from Mr. Vikas DG on ways to automate tasks quickly and cost effectively and other fundamentals of robotic process automation. Let's hear from Mr. Vikas. Over to you, sir.
Thank you for your quick intro. As the topic of discussion today is on robotic process automation. I'm in the industry for almost about 2 decades, so I've seen the automation is a widely adopted subject, and so I'm here to talk about my experiences, share my experiences about. This is not a pure technical session, but however, I will give you some hints in terms of at the last how to go about doing it on. But it's more of trying to give a view in terms of what's robotic process automation is all about, what are the nitty-gritties of it out, and how enterprises, customers are adopting to it out. So this I would spend about 30 minutes giving a view of this out, and then probably we could open it for Q&A at a later point in time. So before I go to the definition or probably defining what robotic process automation is all about to all of you, so let's look at in terms of how today human works. So human are you and me between, like we all work with a certain knowledge that we carry on. So any task that is given to us to solve or probably to work upon, we use two important aspects of it, of our human-centric knowledge. One, our past experiential knowledge, and the natural general intelligence that we carry upon. So basis of these two important aspects, and we also are led by an operating manual that is given to us to probably to solve any given business problem or a task given to us. Take for example, I want to solve a Rubik's problem, or probably I want to do learn guitar. So there is an experiential learning that I would have, and also, of course, of natural intelligence that I bring in. So any task that is given typically would have an operating manual to it. And using those operating manual, using my experiential knowledge, general intelligence, I would act the work that's given task to me out. So, and again, the task would vary basis of situation, basis of the events, basis of the circumstances that we are in. So this is how we typically try to work or try to do our tasks out, and we action that out in form of probably trying to build an application or trying to build probably a workflow or any of that sort. So we try to action that out, and then whatever learnings are there, we try to document it out, and so that it's a knowledge base that we try to create out. So the whole aspect, if you look at it, right, as a human being, we are trying to look at two important aspects. One, the reasoning and the learning aspects. That's a key aspect that what we all as a human today have with us, or this is a key aspect that we today carry with us. So with this, probably giving an intro about how and human-centric knowledge, let me give another dimensions of it out, how we put this together within mission together and try to see how this works together. So typically when I want to task this out to a mission, so we have seen the various revolutions of industries. Typically we started with the machine age, then we found computers, and then computers started taking over us. And then typically it's trying to help us out. Then is where other dimensions of AI came in and all of that. Sorry, if you can go on mute. Sure. Okay, thank you. So what here is I'm trying to give a view is, while we looked at how human works, now I'm trying to bring the mission aspects of it out. So mission typically is not intelligent by itself. It requires an human to teach knowledge to it out, or the intelligence has to be bought by the human to it out. So the way the human would collaborate, work with the mission is typically he would provide all those problem-solving capability in format and knowledge items to the systems. So system stores all of these intelligence which provided with various humans. It is not just by one human. It could be probably any number of humans that is trying to give the knowledge to it all. So it tries to keep all of that knowledge base within itself. And when a given situation to it out and an operating manual which is prescribed to it, it tries to find the easiest path for me to solve the problem. So that's where basically it travels through it out through an algorithmic processing. It uses a data modeling. So all of that aspects comes in, and that's a cognition kicks in. So that's where it tries to reason out a problem given to it and tries to discover how a problem has to be solved. And wherever it is not able to solve onto it, it typically escalates back to the human agent and tries to learn back to him. And whatever it is solved, it stores that as a knowledge base for itself. So next time the same situation is given back to it out, it knows how to solve it out by itself. So this is how typically both the human and the mission collaboration typically works in any environment given to it. It could be a business process automation, it could be IT process automation, any of these out. This is how typically both a human and a mission works. So why I'm trying to build this foundation before I introduce to the RPA topic is because without you understanding this dimension of what intelligence that we all as humans carry and what the limitations of missions would be is critically important out. And of course, all of these, while the system is or the missions are trying to solve, it again has the application of learning and reasoning process which is evident within itself will come into act when it tries to solve a problem. So this is how today mission and human augmentation happens out. So to probably demystify it out, this is how I view myself, how a mission and a system collaborates out. So typically all our thinking skills, reasoning skills is basically the artificial intelligence. And all our motor skills that I use my hands, legs, and things out is my automation. That's where the RPA process comes because we're more of repetitive work. And analytics is basically the sensory part of it. Analytics is basically where I analyze things, gives that inputs out. So all of these in tandem will work to create a robotic process automation for me. So it includes motor skills through automation, brain for intelligence, and sensory for analytics. So this is how both mission and human augmentation would happen together. So with this, I will briefly give a few trends and why we are talking about RP as well. So probably our technology evolved over a period of time. Probably for 2 decades, we've looked at technology in different dimensions. Right from 90s to 2020s, what you see that there are various technology trends have changed. Right from 90s, we started looking at internet coming into play. Client-server architecture came in place. Then in 1995, we saw a lot of processes came in like Six Sigma, Lean. Then, of course, the ERP system came. 2000 is where we started looking at Y2K problem. And then, of course, the public cloud, that's the biggest thing that happened to us to our all mankind. That's where the liberalization of the entire computation aspect, so that anybody could use or anybody could access those high compute resources out, which was only limited to probably universities or probably to large enterprises out. Today it's publicly available out. I can spun any kind of systems by myself through public cloud. And of course, that related to also another dimension that came in 2010 is primarily that liberalization of open source. So wherever we had the Microsoft of the world, Oracles of the world, which we had to pay a huge license fees for me to use their softwares, the market started opening that I could use open source models for myself. Then basis of all of these, right from 2000 to 2010, is where the digitization happened out. So more processes started getting computerized, ERP systems started getting built up because the compute was available out there. Then the e-business started coming up. The people started owning up their own websites. Process got it automated out. So all of these, when it happened out, this gave to a birth called RPA. So that's basically where a repetitive task that I perform every time with probably doesn't require any major human intelligence is where we started putting all of that bucket under RPA. Then, of course, that RPA also in the same year started by applying AI, started becoming more intelligent. We applied machine learning, AI. So that's where the next evolution happened on. And of course, from here on, what we see is two important aspects is the blockchain, a 5G revolution is what we're seeing there on. And how this is impacted from how the entire enterprise is acting upon. So previously, 90s, when the internet was invented out, we had more of centralized approach of me doing things out. Then we started offshoring things, where a lot of business from other European countries, US, started coming to us. That's where the offshore happened out. The Y2K problem was basically one of the offshore things that started out. Then people started outsourcing. Outsourcing is basically the work was given to offshore to a low-cost labor where we could afford for a high volume of work, but again, a low volume or a low-cost price of a person is being outsourced to in country like India or Philippines and kind of thing. So that's where the RPA played an important role because most of this work today and probably in the way human did it is where we are trying to solve it through a robotic process automation. So of course, moving forward, what we are seeing in from 2020 plus onwards, we could see the RPA going to a larger scale of things out where we'll have autonomous supply chains, super intelligent cognitive assistants come into play. Then of course, the compute power is going to go double X in terms of all the quantum computing that's going to come there. So chips is going to become more intelligent, and that's going to help in terms of transforming a lot of things out there. So with this, what would the business operations would look like? We saw the trends of from 90s to 2020 till today, what has happened out. So how does we reimagine ourselves in the new dimension of the digital operations or the business operation would look like? Now the entire business operations would be called as digital operations. They would not be anymore be just as business operations, would be called as digital operations. So what are the dimensions that the digital operations would really require? So one, of course, I talked about the artificial intelligence, the global sourcing happens out, the robotic process automation, which we're going to talk about in the next few slides. That's a critical dimension that's going to come in. Blockchain, that's another dimension of our digital operations. Smart analytics, because anything that data, anything to do with analysis, anything to give a dimensions of what we have analyzed is a smart analytics going to come. And of course, the various different dimensions of digital business models also is going to emerge in the near future. So this is how a digital operations would in the near future would look like us. So any digital operations, these are the key elements that would be part of it out. So either of these would will work in tandem. It is not that either of these only will work, but all of these will work in tandem to create a digital operations from a business operations or a business process automation that or a business process processing BPO work kind of work that we do today is going to become a knowledge automation or a knowledge process automation is what we call the KPO part of it. So that's how things is going to transform in the near future for us. So with this, let me give a brief intro of what RPA is all about. So RPA is a way that any human that we do a repetitive kind of work and which is imbibed by rules or a rule-based process, and it's quite repetitive, is where we can put this into RPA systems. So what does RPA does? So typically RPA records all the human actions. Today, I perform an action going to an ERP system where I've got a form, I put in a lot of information, probably extract data from digitized content. Basically, I've got a form, a printed form. From the printed form, I extract a lot of data, could be name, age, kind of thing out, which typically I would have an human worker looking at the form, typing all those things out is what I do typically. That's how the manual process happens. In a robotic process automation, I would teach a computer, how do I do it? How do I extract the information? How do I analyze that information out? Where this information has to go as a system record into a software is where I teach it through probably showing it what from where to extract, what fields have to be filled in, is what all those actions that I perform as a human, I record this out and I put back to the computer to play back by itself. So typically now the system can replicate actions as many number of times. So if I'm human worker, I could probably today process close to about in a day about 200 to 400 applications which would come to me for me to process. An example, in like probably I'm required to probably do an admission process in a college, where I'm limited with the time that I have, with the capability that I have, I will limit it to that. But with RPA coming into place, I can put to use for 24/7, and it can continuously start churning out with probably, and it will also not get tired. And also I can replicate this processes as well. So what would happen is, now I have a kind of a digital colleague with me, or a digital worker with me, who will work tandemly along with me. So where I would be responsible for giving my intelligent decisions out, while the mundane work will be transformed to a robotic process automation software. So any such repetitive activity, which are again bound by rules, can be outsourced to RPA, and which doesn't require a typical, not any human interventions out, or where there I'll have to have a rapid rate of execution. That means that I should have a parallel execution, is where all gets qualified into a robotic process automation. So in definition, it's an innovative use of software to perform repetitive rule-based knowledge work across enterprise as a substitute to, or to aid in human work. So it is not just I'm trying to get away from humans. Human will still continue to work, and in collaboration with the robotic process automation, because there could be scenarios where the system would not understand a new pattern, or probably it's not trained to a new pattern, or new thing comes up. Then it's where the human intelligence would come into place. So it is going to be a new dimension of a digital worker is going to come out of robotic process automation. So this isn't just of a definition what RPA is all about. So does it mean that it was not there prior? Yes, it was there. And the way it was there was more of macros. If you remember out, we used to, in your engineering, probably you program a lot of things out, a small chunk of code kind of thing out. So that is where all it started with. Wherever the repetitive kind of a mundane process that we do today are all what we had built in as macros. We've probably heard about Excel macros kind of thing out. But again, it had limitations, what it was. I'm trying to talk about RPA, how it got evolved out. So typically macros are limited to a small programs, and it can't scale to beyond level. And second is, it was only limited to screen scraping activities, where I'll have to go fill in certain information to a particular field, and then probably I'll have to do some screen clear training and kind of thing out, or probably go click here kind of thing out. So that's how it all started evolving for a robotic process automation. What's in today, how systems have evolved, how platforms evolved, is today it's more of I can handle any kind of complex. It is today object oriented. So I can have a repetitive form of work that I do today. Typically, if I can take an example, is like I have to do an form scanning, extract data, do an OCR, post OCR. I'll have to fill in information to a form. So that's probably one part of a robotic process automation that I've done. So using object-oriented, I can probably reuse the same part in elsewhere in other processes as well. So today it has become object-oriented. So those macros that I've created can be made repetitive, can be used on operating on multiple systems, can handle process exceptions. If there is an exception, whom to go, whom to escalate, what's the next path I should take, all of that complexities and capabilities is built part of it on. And second, it can handle large data, because when I talk about a process automation, take for example, I'm doing an income tax filing. So income tax filing is humongous job today. If you look at about 6 to 8 years back, people had to go to a chartered accountant, and they had to compute a lot of things out. Now all of that is being taught back to robotic process automation. Today I may need a chartered accountant today, probably to wherever there are gross errors, or probably there could be his signatures are required, or probably is to authorize things, or probably there are exceptions that he has to foresee it out. But most of the other activities which required for me to compute those aspects of for me to file an income tax is all today done through a robotic process automation. How it's possible out? I've taught the rules, I've taught the actions that has to perform, and the intelligence of what data decisions I have to take is all put in back to the systems. So this is how we have evolved just by from a macro to a probably today I can handle probably at any given point in time of close to about a lakh and a crore kind of records that I can process it out. So that's how the systems have started evolving for us. So where do I apply it out and how do I apply it out? So can I apply RPA across anything and everything that I look in my operations? No, not really. We'll have to qualify it out. So the typical qualification that what we see is where it bound by a rule, which I talked about, which is less human intervention? Is it repetitive in nature? Got large volumes of data to process it out, and it has got a stable process. So if we have these qualifications are being qualified for any business case that is being provided for me to do in robotic process automation, is where we can qualify and put in RPA platform there. So where do I apply it on? I can apply it in banking, typically where I have to do a loan processing. Probably I could view it for, say, account opening processing. That's in the banking process. Likewise, if I go to a manufacturing plant, I'll have to do a purchase order processing. I'll have to extract data from the purchase order. Then post-processing, the purchase order is being extracted out. Then I'll have to feed into an ERP system. So those repetitive actions that I take, it could be banking, it could be it could be the back office operations in a manufacturing industry. It could be in HR operations. Typically, the employee onboarding process in an enterprise can be completely robotically process automated out. So typically, it can be applied across wherever we see a high volume of work, which is repetitive in nature, which could be data entry operations. This could be a process checklist. It could be mass mail communications or mail processing capability that's required. It could be required for me to convert data from one format to other format. It could be ERP transactions. So the kind of dimensions that RPA provides is humongous. It can be applied across various systems, various industries, which again, volume of work is high, repetitive nature. That's a key principle that would have. And how do I apply it today? So each of these would go through a qualification process. So typically we understand the process, then we try to optimize the process wherever it's unnecessary processes are today going about. Then we try to look at digitizing certain operations. So it is just not an easy process, right? I bring in a platform called RPA and I plug in and all starts working for me. So there are other dimensions that I'll have to also look at it. One, the process aspects, the process that we're trying to automate, how good, bad it is. Can I really automate it out? Are there too many human interventions? Are there in or not? Then look at what are the inputs it requires. Are these inputs digitized? Because it doesn't understand. Probably I give a piece of form to an RPA system and tell it, okay, go and digitize it out. It doesn't understand. So I'll have to probably do a digitization process. In the digitization process, I'll have to help understanding RPA what each of these dimensions are. Like probably in a given form, a name is written, or probably in a screen, in a computer screen, there could be a field where there is an age, there could be an address. So how does each of these different dimensions look like for it out? So I'll have to train that out. So that's how the entire process happens for an RPA platform to get implemented. So moving forward, what and how the industry has started taking it out, so or started adopting this. So typically what we have seen is it starts with the task-based automation. Typically the small repetitive activities today are performed. So typically and back office in a bank replies to email. So it could be inquiries, it could be status inquiry on their account opening, it could be status inquiry on their check statuses, or it could be inquiry on their bank balance. So it could be various such things out. So that's typically a low-end automation, which doesn't require much of intelligence, where I know how the mail comes, what happens out. I don't need to have run through probably multi-dimensional to it out. So that's where we call the task-based automation that we perform. Then comes the rule-based, where I'll have to perform a check-in balance. That's the robotic process automation that we look at it. And then where I apply some bit of thinking, in terms of thinking, where I talk about where I give in a dimension of a different data set, not a structured data, unstructured data to it. And then where the intelligence required. So that's where we call the high-end automation. Then the extreme automation is basically I use lot of AI aspects to probably build a virtual assistants, classification, routing of the problem into an expert. So all of that it will come in the extreme automation. So this entire processes of right from a low end to an extreme automation comes with an intelligence. As we move up the curve, as we go to the extreme automation, it requires a higher intelligence. And likewise, the deployment capability means like I'll have to integrate with systems, multiple systems. It is not RPA itself can do it. It has to probably augment all the systems within itself as well. So that's another complexity that would have as we grow up to higher dimensions of RPA. So if you look at what happens in each of these segments, which I talked about, the low end, high end automation, and extreme automation. Typically in low end automation, the data is limited to a specific, I know the data set, and it is not, and it's very structured data. So I don't need to worry much of data because data is known to it, and data doesn't frequently changes. And where I can apply a small program, like the kind of a macro we discussed, and it is non-invasive. It can be, and it's limited to a particular system or a particular person. So it is not a large-scale deployment. So take, for example, you have your Google Assistant, your Alexa. So these are typically where I do a low-end automation, where I teach those systems to do a typical activity, like and go and tell that, okay, Google, go and do this task of finding today in my calendar, what are the tasks I have to perform. So what happens in the background? So as soon as you give that construction to the Google Assistant, it fires a query through an RPA system to my calendar. The calendar system comes up. Then the robotic process automation, either if it has got an API, it can take the data. If it doesn't have an API, it can do a screen scraping, take the data, make it understandable, and give it back to me. So that's localized only to me, and it's personalized only to me. And higher end automation, so it's typically where the structured data, it will still continue with the known data, but it can be it has got a dimensions of various integrations, and as well as the deployment would scale as and it requires out. And in the extreme automation, I can throw up any kind of data to it, and it can be structured, unstructured, voice, PDF, images, anything it can do. And the key aspect out here is these are all more of algorithm based or rule based. Here is where the algorithm intelligence comes, where it can understand patterns. If different patterns comes, hypothesis generation I have to do. So all of that intelligence aspects happens out in the extreme automation out. So this is a third or the last dimension, that when a journey of RPA automation is looked at, we start with the low-end automation, move on to the high-end automation, then we go to the extreme automation, where AI, learning, reasoning aspects would come into place. So that's how the dimension of the robotic process automation would get implemented for all of us. So how does it look like? So while we looked at the path of RPA, how the enterprise are adopting to it out, how does the future look like for us? So the future from here on would look like more of, I can go and hire a skill. Today, probably in your placement office, various companies come, they ask for your CV, they go through it out, they go through an interview process, they'll evaluate your skills. Basis of this, people start hiring you. Now we have got a marketplace where I can go and subscribe that I need a bot of this nature, which can do, which can probably understand English. It can do some bit of data extraction from my forms. It can do hypothesis generation, pattern recognition. I can give various dimensions of skills, and I can create my own bot. And this bot can be generalized, and this bot can be brought into an enterprise, made it contextualized. So typically when a new hire is taken to a company, it goes through a training process. Likewise, the bot also goes through a training process. Once the training process is basically is for it to understand the contextualization of that enterprise. It could be how the rules and regulations, the policies of that organization is all that happens in the training aspects. That's where the bot gets trained. Then it could get deployed for various needs of it. It could be used for diagnosis approach. It could be used for discovery. It could be used for classification problem. It could be used for natural interaction. So today, what we have seen the trend in the industry is bots are coming with CVs, and it is telling that, hey, look, I am skilled to do these activities, and you can hire me at this price, and I can give you at this rate of work. So today I can go and hire a bot, and as soon as I'm done with the job, I can retire it. So the dimensions of the way human is trying to work is enormously changing. So whatever is kind of repetitive, wherever there are thinking aspects are required, so all of that is coming to through an RPA process. So it is very easy for an enterprise, just go to the bot store, hire the bot, and deploy it out in the enterprise with a good amount of data curation. So does it mean that all of us is going to lose our jobs and tomorrow we'll all doesn't have anything out? No, it's not end. So I'll come to that dimension of problem, how we have solved, what's going to happen in the near future. So, but to give you a view, this is how the industry is moving upon. This is how the industry is looking at the RPA and the bots coming to play. So which is how the future is going to look like from here from. So what is it affecting the way we work today? As we see, bots are getting used across it, so it could be also used in call center. Today, if you call a banker and ask it, okay, I want to check my balance, in the back end, you may not see a human working onto it. You may see a bot working onto it. So the bot is basically speaking to you and giving all the information out. So we don't require those repetitive, non-intelligent work where I'm trying to go put some data, extract some things out, and rattle a few things out. So all of those work are going to get automated. So give it or take it. So in the near future, we will not see the business process or the BPO kind of work, which we used to have in 2000, where people used to go and do a banking operations, they used to go purchase order processing, or probably investment and banking. So all of that is all getting to a robotic process automation. So from this, what we have seen is 45% of all of those activities can be completely automated out. And what we've seen is close to about $2 trillion could be saved because of RPA. And ROI is just about 6 to 9 months. The 6 to 9 months is basically trying to augment the bot with the data. That's all is what is required for it to get the ROI. So that's the typical gestation period for an RPA projects to get on. And what the CEOs are telling, that 94% of all the CEOs, it could be banking, it could be pharmacy industry, it could be probably manufacturing, all of them are adopted to robotic process automation. And there is also another prediction that I'm seeing is by 2025, 25% of all of the jobs gets robotized. So is this what should be worried about it? What do we do next? So all that I've learned, my skills and everything out, will it be still relevant? Yes, it's still relevant. While we invest our time in and holding up our skills in RPA, we also learn the AI aspects of it out. So that's the critical aspect that we should all look at about it. While we understood how RPA works, why RPA is important, now let's look at, is this the end of business process outsourcing? So really, it's not. So RPA looks forward. So we looked at RPA is primarily helping business in reducing operational expenses and avoiding possibility of human error. It helps companies to get these bots at a low cost, and it's easily to implement it out, which it helps to easy to automate their services, and customers can bring in precisely a lot of value delivery to it out. So we have seen it's useful, but is it going to end my job? No. RPA always aims in helping hand to enhance the business processes, and it cannot replace a human process or humans at all. So it's basically trying to augment human aspects rather than replacing humans. So that's how the dimensions is going to create. And there is no doubt that RPA is going to strengthen business process performance, and by automating services and reducing manual tasks. So this means that it's not going to make outsourcing absolute. So robotic process automation is here to stay. We are here to stay along with that, and we're going to co-work with that. So companies now, or enterprises, know the significance of both the dimensions of human intelligence and the robotic process intelligence and AI intelligence, and they're going to bring all of this together. So that's where they're trying to free up those their activities that staff are today doing in a repetitive or a focus on rather than doing this repetitive activity. They're trying to look at the humans has to look at more of a high value activities, and while RPA services will be augmenting it out. So that's how the new dimensions is going to occur from here on. So with this, what I would give you is a quick thought is like, so its winners is not either the mission or the humans. It's probably both working together and collaboratively out. So that's my thought in terms of how an RPA and RPA systems will work and will get evolved out. So for you as a student, what next? How do you work on this? What you could do? So one, there are a whole bunch of open source RPA. So as I told I started my session that I don't want to dwell into the technicalities of it out because there's a lot of self-learning by yourself. You can do it out. So I give a gist of how RPA is evolving it out, how RPA systems is going to really benefit for you. So that's a dimension I give it to you. So what you can do onto it from there. So there is a whole bunch of open source platforms that are available, like Selenium, OpenCV, Robot Framework, SQL. So these are all the systems that today you can go do a self-learning by itself, and you can create your own platform today. Mean to say that you can now start coding it out. So when you come out of your college and you want to be ready to be deployed out, you have these skills with you, because this is a key asks in the industry that do you have these kind of skills. Likewise, these are open source. You also have a COTS product or commercially available softwares, which are today like Automation Anywhere, Blue Prism, UiPath. So these are commercially available softwares. They also have courses. They also have certifications. You can go through it out, and you can also start effectively, slowly start building a smaller dimension of digital assistants, a digital worker, so that you can try and test by yourself and you are ready for the industry as you pass out of your college. So with this, I thank for a patient hearing, open for questions. Any questions from anyone? I'm open for questions now.
Dear participants, kindly type in your questions in the chat box and Mr. Vikas will address them. We have our first question from Karthikeyan, from Muthu Karthikeyan, sir. Okay. Welding and AI system is available.
Yeah, I'm sorry, I could not get this question out. Welding and AI systems is available. I probably I'm not able to get this. So Karthikeyan, if you can probably rephrase your question and ask it again, really helpful out. I see another question called, can Selenium automation testing be considered as robotic process automation? Yes, of course, you could consider Selenium automation also as robotic process automation if it's working together with SQL. Any other questions?
Are there any more questions? We'll wait for another second. Yeah. Okay.
Okay, there's another question. I'm seeing this expert system using AI is available in welding process. I really I'm not sure about this, but I'll probably have to get back to you on this. And there's another question: is programming language knowledge mandatory for RPA? Not really. You don't need to do have a programming language as a mandatory, but it's good to have it, but not necessarily mandatory, because most of the RPA skills would, if you're using a COTS product, would be more of a drag and drop approach. And programming is less because it's more of low code, no code kind of platforms that these are. But if you're going to use an open source and you're trying to build yourself, of course, a Python or a Java is really mandated out there. Okay. Out of this, UiPath, Automation Anywhere, Blue Prism, which are user friendly, I would rate like this. Automation Anywhere is the first priority choice in most of the industry that I've seen. They have a structured approach, and especially for you all engineering students, they have an automation university. You can go enroll yourself. There is a course that you can go through it by yourself, and they also offer a free certification if you're an engineering student. And next is probably the sixth choice is UiPath. That's a higher adoption that I've seen. And then the third is Blue Prism. Yeah, one other point that I want to share with you all is, so the whole idea of this session was not to make it very technical, because I just wanted to open up for you in terms of looking at this area, because this is because I'm in this industry and I've seen uh, this skill is today not very uh, available like exhaustively out, because typically we hire people, engineering students, then we get them trained. So if you're already pre-trained on all of these technologies, right, it would really help us to start utilizing from you all of you from day one as we get into our enterprises. So I would request each one of you to look at your areas of interest. Probably it's not necessary that I'm mandating that you have to learn RPA, because RPA is another an area that you can look at it. And likewise, AI is another dimension that you can look at it, because that's also is equally important. So look at balancing between both RPA and AI, because this is the most important skill that's emerging out for us. So I see another question: if 25% of jobs will be taken or bots, then with the people should we do who are poor and educated? So it's not. So again, clarifying it out to you. So these are repetitive work which doesn't need to be done by a human. So that is where I'm trying to talk about. Those 25% of jobs are irrelevant by human doing it out, because we don't use any kind of intelligence. So that's those repetitive or non-intelligent act is where it is going to go away. So we are designed to, wherever we taught engineering is to do an intelligent job, not a repetitive job. So I'm talking about those 25% job is specifically in the area of repetitive work. So the affected parties could be the bankers who are doing the banking, probably processing application, those kind of things also. But the technical aspects will never go away. So those 25% is the desk jobs that today a human is doing will get out. So if you look at another dimension to this as well as if you go to most of these enterprises, I don't want to name myself, but while I represent Wipro, but most of the service industry today we have are investing on this technology. They are either building their own, they're either adopting platforms like this, because it's going to be humongous that we can't have investing on human capital and doing all of the repetitive jobs. So there is a clear mandate across enterprises, and today probably let's not be surprised. Probably 2 years down the line, we would have a line item in the annual reports of all these companies talking about how profitability I made by doing automation, because that's another colleague that I'm going to hire from here on. So that's how we start measuring the work done by these bots. So that's a dimension that we started measuring in the industry. So it is not just I am going to do an appraisal cycle for an employee or trying to give remuneration to him, but equivalently, the given it or take it, that aspect is going to emerge very clearly out.
We'll just wait for another 2 minutes and then close the session. Okay, we have another question.
Okay. So the difference between AI and RPA is AI is more towards again, AI has got a larger dimensions out. So AI existed well about it from 1945, but all of these started coming to place is primarily for the availability of compute, the cloud aspects happened out. So that's where the AI is come to us now, or come to limelight now. So the difference between RPA and AI is both of them will coexist, but a difference between is AI is more towards giving intelligence, where I'll have to do reasoning process, learning process is where the AI comes to play. RPA is basically where I'll have to do repetitive work. It doesn't need anything kind of thinking process or any kind of where it can have decision making capability, but doesn't require any reasoning process is where RPA is all about. So what enterprise are trying to do is combining both of these. They're trying to call it as IRPA, so intelligent process automation out. So combining both the intelligence of AI and RPA is where the new dimensions of things is going to come up for you. So an example I would like to take is typically a loan processing example, where I'll have a form given to you, you fill up the form, but these forms would go to a back office and somebody has to key in this form. So before this form gets keyed, rather than gets a human doing it out, so what we do is we give it to scan this out, digitize it out, basis of post digitization. Then I under-technicalization to identify your what I call your signatures. That's an AI that I've applied. I've extracted data from the form which you've written. That's an OCR capability that I'm bringing from AI. Or probably I'll have to make a decision. Should I process this loan for you or not? Where basis of your credit score, your education qualification, it could be your earnings, basis of this or your past credit history, all of these put together, the AI would take the decisions. But the RPA is predominantly trying to do data entry operations, data processing aspects is what RPAs would be required. So that's the difference that will happen. Okay, another question I see that how long will it take for an intermediate student to work an RPA tool? Not more than about, from a course perspective, the courses are not more than about 12 hours course. And then post which it would not take more than for you to become an expert in next 3 months of time. So that's 3 months is what you should give yourself. I think you could expertise by yourself. So typically you could start with a small application that today you perform where you'll have to, somebody is trying to fill a form. So try to create some mock-ups around it so that you get to know about how things are happening out. So probably you want to do a simple example. You have all of you have email accounts. So can you classify your emails? Can you read your emails? So that's a simple thing that you can start with. So that's how you can start to experiment things with it. Can you use some examples for the continuous work? I still didn't get this question, so probably if you can rephrase it out, really helpful lot for me. Okay, so continuous work that bot can do is anything that is repetitive nature. Anything example with related to your insurance policy processing, where I can keep giving any amount of data to it, any amount of forms to it out. It can continuously process it out. It has to analyze some data. To take for example, it has to crunch in some data to some forms, or probably it has to analyze some data. So all of this can happen on a continuous basis. So take for example, I have probably in the morning, typically the bank collects all the open savings bank accounting process. It subjects it out and it collects it out and it sends it to their head office. So in head office, typically, all of these, it would be coming from various branches. It gets processed through a continuous process inside the back office. So that's where the robotic process automation keeps extracting the data from the forms, putting it back, and it probably needs to send a notification through an email. So all of that can happen continuously. So is RPA cost effective for small site companies? Yes, definitely it's cost effective, but again, you will have to pick and choose. Again, the principal rules that you should look at for qualifying the business case is basically is RPA the kind of process that you want to automate is rule based, with less human interventions, repetitive nature, with large volumes, and it has got a stable process. So, and for cost for small size companies, I would advise to probably you can experiment with the open source, which I talked about, like Selenium, OpenCV, Robot Framework, SQL. So you could start experimenting with that.
Mr. Vikas, thank you for your patience in taking up so many questions.
Yeah, thank you, everyone. All the best, and thanks for ISRT and Select Smart. Thanks for giving me this opportunity to spend time for about an hour with all of you. Thank you very much.
Sure. It was a very interesting session. Thank you for introducing us to the latest technology. And it gave us a learning opportunity to learn more on RP and AI, which has been very informative and has made all of us very curious to learn more. Thank you very
Thank you.
much. And we're looking forward to more sessions from you, Mr. Vikas.
Sure, definitely I'll do that. Thank you. Thanks everyone. All the best to all of you. Thank you.